All right. Good evening, everyone. We are live tonight. Thank you so much, first and foremost, for changing your schedules. We asked you to change your schedules. We are 6 p.m. Eastern Time to accommodate our facilitators. Thank you all so very much for the phenomenal questions. Your participation last week was phenomenal. Your follow up email questions that we will present to our facilitators tonight. We have a special guest joining us tonight. Do us a favor, wherever you are, let us know which city you are in. Let us know which city you're in. Drop the location of your city. Create a watch party. Share, like, invite your friends, your entire list, your contact list. Invite them to join us tonight. We're looking forward to part two. Last week, we were so blessed. Good evening, Elizabeth. Good evening, Kendra. So good to see you all. We are live on Women Can Preach 2 Facebook page and YouTube Live. And so we're excited to be here. Again, let us know what city you are from. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop those questions in the comment section, and we will add those questions to the questions that we already have for our facilitators tonight. Amen. Wonderful. Okay, so God bless you, Pastor Hardy. Good to see you tonight. Thank you so much for all of your support. I tonight would like again to thank Dr. Lori Brown, Dr. Sean Stewart, Angelica Brooks, and Tiffany Harrison from last week, part one. I want to thank them for such a phenomenal job. This week, we added part two by your request. We have almost 2,000 views now floating throughout social media. So because of your support, we appreciate you. Tonight, we're adding a guest, Martinez Sellers. And what I want to do is I want to begin with Dr. Stewart. Dr. Stewart will give his introduction, followed by Dr. Brown, followed by Angelica, followed by Tiffany, and then Martinez. All right. Good evening. Thank you all for joining us.
All right. Good evening. Thank you, Yvonne, for having us again on part two. I'm excited about the work that we're doing and the conversations that we're having. And I think this is a good point of reference to kind of help bring some light to some things. I am a 20-year veteran of education. All of my years have been in special ed, general ed. I have experience from the elementary, pre-K elementary, middle school, and high school. I kind of love the middle school monster, as it's called, because it's kind of right when we really get a chance to shape them. And I also have, 26 years of preaching experience, 8 years of pastoring, and a couple of degrees here along the way, and a couple of certifications along the way to kind of keep us afloat. And it's just good to be able to serve with you all the way from the grand state of Texas, all the way in the metropolis of Houston. So good to be with you on this evening.
Amen.
Oh, and my folks just tagged me. I'm sorry. And I'm the pastor of Freedom Church, Houston, Texas. Thank you. I was going to get in trouble. They just tagged me. Freedom Church, Houston, Texas is in the house. And I'm the humble servant.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Laurie Johnson Brown. I'm a 21-year veteran of education. I'm currently a vice principal in Charles County Public Schools. I've been in, kind of like Dr. Stewart, I've been in elementary, middle, and high school. I'm certified special education as well, and I've also as a reading specialist. I'm the president and CEO of Ambrosia Natural Skincare and Majid Educational Services. And for Majid Educational Services, we deal with children who are in special education. We go to advocate for them in their meetings and in their school. So thank you so much for having me. Once again, the conversation last week was amazing. I can only imagine how the conversation will go today. I got feedback from folks that I had on the line, and they were very, very grateful for everything that you all shared last week. So thank you so very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Angelica Brooks. I have been in the field of education for over 20 years. I have been with Prince George's County Public Schools for 12 years, and I am the reigning Teacher of the Year for Prince George's County Public Schools. I'm a choral educator. I've taught at all levels, elementary, middle, and high. And I'm excited to be a part of this conversation. I'm former pastor of the Gathering International Worship Center, and I also am a mother to a young 4-year-old, Austin, who I've been homeschooling since the pandemic started. And so I'm really happy to be a part of this conversation as an educator and as a parent.
Good evening, everybody. I am Tiffany Harrison. I'm so glad to be back here for part 2 with these wonderful people. Can't wait to hear from Martinez. I learned so much last week, and I'm so excited to learn more. I worked for Verizon for 20 years, and I only left to be a full-time mom and homeschooler to her. I have a bachelor's in journalism, working on my MBA, 3 classes, not 3 credits to go, but 3 classes to go.
That's a difference.
But 3 credits would be 1 class, I wish. But I'm excited and can't wait to get into tonight.
Right, wonderful. All right, so we left off last week discussing a lot of the signs and symptoms as it pertains to how do you know if your child is experiencing depression. And we received a number of emails, I guess, from parents and persons who are homeschooling. They want to know more about tapping in, being in tune with the child. In other words, how do they know what characteristic, behavior, traits that they're exhibiting? And when they do exhibit those, some persons mention that they don't feel comfortable contacting the school at this present time. So can you guys talk to that matter before we get into the list of questions?
Sure, I'll start off. So I did contact my child's pediatrician regarding Austin because I thought he was exhibiting some symptoms of depression. Well, we talked it out. Luckily, she said, okay, he's not suffering from depression. But I have noticed some changes like in his appetite and things like that, but he is still showing signs of resiliency. He's still finding joy in other, activities. So she was like, well, based on what you've told me, and, he was able to actually, it was a telemed appointment. So he was able to get on camera and talk to her a little bit, which helped. But if you're not comfortable maybe reaching out to the school, then you can definitely contact your child's pediatrician and have a telemed, appointment and just kind of talk it out, and even have the doctor talk to your child just to see if this is something you need to be worried about, or maybe if you're just perhaps overreacting like I was, but I noticed some differences, and I'd rather be safe than sorry. So definitely you can contact your child's pediatrician if you think there may be some signs.
In addition to that, the next person, Martinez, if you jump in, they also wanted to know, can they contact social workers? Like, are social workers only assigned to kids with behavioral issues?
Great. Again, my name is Martina Sellers, and I am a marriage and family therapist with an emphasis on child development in the state of California. In Southern California, I was a former executive director of a charter school for high schools, and started my own business 4 years ago with Marcel Consulting and Mental Health Services. And the founder of Mental Health Matters with Marty podcast with that. And my emphasis definitely being Black men, especially during this climate. One of the things I suggest to all parents, just like we are adjusting, our children are adjusting as well. They don't have the vocabulary a lot of times that we do. And sometimes I'm glad that you were able to look at behaviors. Yes, if you're seeing behavioral changes, and even sometimes our children will revert back to some former behaviors. I have a 29-year-old, a 22-year-old, and please do not judge me, a 4-year-old. Help me, Holy Ghost. And my 4-year-old, yes, is reverting back to wedding. And so because she, for 10 weeks, I pulled her out of her daycare. And so she, even though she could not say, Daddy, something's different going on. She was, I miss my teacher. I miss my friends. I miss this. So having age appropriate conversations with your children. Listen, we don't have to always solve the problem, but they need a voice just like we have a voice to say, hey, something feels different. Something's a little different. And finding ways to have just simple conversations with them and saying, you know what, you're right. Mommy and daddy's a little nervous. We don't know what's going on, but hey, we're here together and trying to find some sort of normalcy in this. And I would definitely even encourage family time together so that they know that mommy and daddy are there, especially, y'all, we got to lay outside the difference. I'm going to shut up after this. For those who have two parent households, it is our responsibility to come together as responsible adults. Let me say, it's our responsibility to lay down the differences and come together as responsible adults to make sure that our children can express themselves and have some sort of normalcy as possible. And that does help a lot in this depression, anxiety, and all that they're going through adjustment disorder just like we are. We are all adjusting. So just because we have our children, listen, they are adjusting just like we are. So we have to have those conversations. And thank you.
Okay, here we are. So when is too much work, too much work? In other words, some of the children are saying that they're doing more work than they were actually doing in the classroom. How can you either modify or how can you adjust the work without having them miss the assignments that is, that's necessary for them to turn in?
I think that, oh, I'm sorry, I would take that one, but I think we have to have a couple of other things attached to that. The reason it feels like we're doing more work is because you're at home. There is no reprieve. There is no separation. There is no, like, it's kind of like work. You don't mind working at work because when you leave work, you left work. Well, when you're working at home, you don't get to leave home because we're kind of like in restrictions right now. So we have to watch that. Then when you're at home, it is your mama can say things to you about not getting your work done that your teacher can't do. Your mom can bring you within inches of your life, and teachers cannot. We can look at the inches of your life, but we can't take you there. And so for the kids, the weight of the work is different. But now let's talk about exceptions. We can accommodate the work, meaning we can give extended time. We can grant you a little bit more time to get the work done. We can cut the assignment down, but we have to communicate one with another. So we need our parents to communicate with the teachers with the parents, and children are techno savvy now. Like, we got Class Dojo, you Google Classroom, you have immediate response in the classroom. As soon as you send stuff, you can private chat your teacher. Most teachers have went and got Google numbers. And so you have a way to communicate with your teacher. The only way we will know, most teachers are good, but we're not academic prophets. And so if you don't tell us that there is an issue in the work, we won't know, because it's one teacher to 28 to 35 kids. And so to make that accommodation, we need to hear from you, and open communication is always the key to any academic support.
I'd like to also piggyback on Dr. Stewart. One of the things that I would say for some of our students with disabilities, some of the assignments could be cut down some for them. They should be modified when they receive them, but I've been talking to some families in the area where I am and in PG County, and some of the work is not being modified for students with disabilities. So, parents can decide, okay, instead of doing 25 on a page, we're going to do 10, and work with their students at their students' level. Also, you don't have to do a straight through 6-hour day. You can break that day up. Because when they're at school, they change class. If they're changing classes or they're changing their subjects, they're going out to recess. If they're in elementary school, they're going to lunch. They're doing all these different things. So make sure you make time for breaks. Don't expect for children to sit and do what we as adults don't do. We can't sit still for 6 hours, because by 30 minutes, we're already writing our shopping list. You know, when we're in faculty meetings, I know goodness well people are not listening to me. They are already at home and they're cooking. So that's the same thing with children. We need to give them little breaks in between. That's what we try to do in schools now as well, is because they need breaks. You can do mindfulness moments. We usually put something up on our smart boards, and they can stretch, they can move. You want your kids to move, because the more they move, the more they learn. We find that their brains are being fed when they're moving. So we want them to move. We don't want them just to sit in a chair all day. If I go to a classroom and children are sitting in rows and they're all quiet, I know that the only person that's learning in that room is the teacher. The child hasn't learned it, because they just like, there's no engagement. I would rather have a cacophony of chaos in the classroom and see that kids are doing and moving. Same thing with you at home. You make it fun for your child. You know, think about when you were 12, or think about when you were 17, or think about when you were 7. Things that you like, your kid might like as well. Make it engaging. All ways that you can present the curriculum that you're getting from the school. And if you have problems, like Dr. Stewart said, please, please, please stay in contact with your school. We are always here to help.
Well, a suggestion I like to offer as well is something called Brain Breaks. And parents, you can look this up. There are several websites that you can visit that talk about using brain breaks. And these are just short, quick activities that motivate the brain, that gets the child off of the task, gives their brain a break, gets them something fun, silly, quirky to do before jumping back into the work. So highly recommend parents looking up brain breaks, which are great activities that you can do with your kids.
Angelica, the parents need brain breaks. So that's a great, I know I do. Listen, I have to be very honest. You know, I'm called to teach and to preach. I do it very well. I'm a great mother. But when it comes to sitting with the 5-year-old, I need a brain break. And I have to be honest with that, you know, my wife is gifted in that area. So I just step out of the way while I'm taking my brain break. The next question is, should parents share in the duties? I think Martinez mentioned, you know, in terms of co-parenting, that's a whole different dynamic. But should parents share in the duties of homeschooling? What if the child is a single parent? Well, what if the parent is a single parent at home? How does those dynamics work?
I'll start.
I can speak from my experience. Yes, we definitely do. And then we had to have a honest conversation, because I'm an educator. I guess it was just assumed that I would take on the full responsibility of educating our son at first. And I was like, wait, I'm also still an educator and responsible for other children. Number one. Number two, you need to also be aware of what he's learning and how he learns. Yes, my child has 2 parents. Amen. So between the two of us, I am the more patient one, because I educate for a living. However, it's important that if there are 2 parents, that both parents are definitely present to look at the learning style of their child, to see how their child learns, to see how their child develops. What does your child do when they make a mistake? How do they recover? When the light bulb goes off for a child, what does that look like for your child? Because when this is all over, you're going to need to communicate these things to your child's new teacher next year, which you will most likely be meeting online. Clearly. You will then be the expert on your child's learning patterns, how they learn, their areas of development. You need to be able to speak these to your educational professional, whoever the child's teacher will be in the upcoming fall semester. So yes, both parents should definitely be taking a part in that process.
if I can speak to it from a therapeutical point of view as well, I love, been recommended to a lot of my families, COVID vision boards, where we get to create responsibilities. We get to create, what do we want our family to look like during this COVID time?
Wow.
Then you're getting buy-in from the children as well. What should maybe we have a half-day Friday. So what does that mean if we have a half-day Friday? I'm all in favor of it, but that means we got to do more work Monday through Thursday. So if I'm gonna release that, and I love the suggestions that the brain breaks, I'm gonna use that in therapy because we need brain breaks. I need a brain break with that. And I love this because we're taking practical tools that does not cost any money to deliver brilliant outcomes, and using the strengths and weaknesses of everyone in the family. If your strength is math and science, then you're responsible for all the math and sciences. Mine is English and right. You're responsible for all of that. And you can be creative. Pull out. We're gonna use math in you're gonna bake a cake today, baby, and this is how we're gonna do it, so we can have it for lunch. And then we double the recipe. That's get buy-in, and it builds self-esteem. Since we're talking about depression too, now it's lowering the depression, it's lowering the anxiety, it's dealing with the adjustment disorders, because we're in this together, and the parents are now modeling the behaviors that we want to see out of our children.
Ooh, I need a counseling session. Yes.
Okay, so for us, we do share the duties. It doesn't have to be equal, which it isn't. I'm the primary teacher, and it's just better for Zoe to adapt to one teaching style. What I like for Yvonne to do is she does the physical education, and I'm naturally she's a coach, so it's just easier, and it gives me a break. And guess what? I don't want to do the physical education. My brain is already on 100 from doing the core classes, so I don't need to do the physical education. So I'm so happy. And it's fun when, we all take part. She also does some of the cooking with her, the baking, and all of that. So it's the shared duties is a good idea. Like Angelica said, it's important if you're in a 2-parent household, everyone needs to know what the teaching style is, what's being taught, what needs to be adhered to. So it's definitely a good idea.
Okay, this question, it might be a little weird, but I actually got one question. I didn't put this in the email. So what if the student, this is an older student, she's 11th grade, and said she doesn't feel comfortable with the supervision of her parent because she just feels like she's competent, she's independent, but her mother is persistent with trying to be involved with the process of the homeschooling? What does the young student do in that situation?
So
How's everyone laughing, by the way?
Look, Dr. Stewart and I both, we like, yeah.
You go right ahead. I'll come behind you.
You want to go first?
Okay. You go first. We'll tag team.
Okay. What I wanted to say, when a young person, you said that the young person was in 11th grade?
Yeah, she's 11th grade, and she sent me an inbox.
In 11th grade. You are preparing that young person for life. So at that age, you have to start giving them a little bit of freedom. We start doing that in elementary school. Like, we have where they do circle time and they go to their different center times. So everyone, is learning how to be independent. We want our young people to be more independent. So if that child is in the 11th grade, mom needs to say, okay, this is what needs to be done. I need to see it done. Once we get there, you have to trust them. If that child hasn't done anything for you not to trust that they're going to do what they're supposed to do, allow them to do it. Give them some responsibility, because when they're at school, my teachers can't be underneath them all day. High school, those teachers have 100 and some kids, sometimes 200 and some kids a day. So our kids have to learn how to be independent. So that's something, Mom, you got to let go of that apron string just a little bit and give them that responsibility and that independence.
All right, I want to add to that, and just I want to push a couple of things. One, responsibility and respect look completely different. Okay, responsibility and respect looks different. We drill into our children every day what respect is and how they should display it. What we haven't taught our children is how to receive it. And so when we look at the level of instruction, when we start talking about that we want a kid to be independent, the first place it needs to start is at home, because if we don't train them to be independent at home, then they will not be able to be independent thinkers in the world. Secondly, I'm sorry, is that better? Okay, great. And so when we start looking at the independent and when we start looking at the fidelity check, we need to check to see if the kid gets it. If the kid is showing you that they got it, move around, don't hover, because the hover is the frustration. Let the kid show you that they got it. If they got it, trust them and move around. Now, most kids, especially in 11th grade, they only going to surface when they want something or need something. So if they come say, I need help with this, then only help with that. Don't bother the rest of that. Trust them to come back to you. Because then when they trust you with the little, then they'll trust you with the big stuff also.
I was also going to say, too, that many school districts have some type of online grading system where students and parents can go online and check their students' grades and see what the students are turning in, to see what grades they are actually getting. So there's a way for that parent to still be able to monitor their child's progress, via Google Classroom, or in Prince George's County, we use SchoolMax, things like this, to see that their child is actually turning in the assignments without necessarily being the helicopter, parent in that situation. And plus, at in 11th grade, we're preparing this child to be college and career ready. And so, once they actually leave high school, it is no longer our responsibility to check on, have you worked your 8 hours at your job? Did you turn in your assignment, to your college professor? So I definitely echo the sentiments of the previous speakers. Please give this child an opportunity to be autonomous, to be independent, because this is what all of these years of training that we've been giving our children has been leading up to, their ability to function as an independent member of society.
Wonderful. Awesome. So the big question is what's going to happen next year, obviously the next calendar year, academic year. A lot of people talking about it. We're coming to the close of the year. What about, how do you tell kids and parents for those children that do not want to go back to school? Some don't want to go back to school. What type of conversation are you having at home with your child? And should you incorporate the teacher, the social worker, or any other administrator to help facilitate this conversation?
First, an administrator and a teacher can't be a part of that conversation because they can't tell you what the school year is going to look like, because we don't know. And the reason for them to be a part of a conversation that they can't give clarity on will further confuse the situation. So I think it's best that we wait. And then here's the other thing we're not talking about. You don't know if the teacher you're talking to now is going to be the teacher that's there next year. And so then we obligate ourselves to conversations we're not clear on. And so the things that you should do, if you have not enrolled, most school districts have a parent communication board where you can enroll and get the emails, the notices of what's going on. That's going to be your fastest way to find out what is happening. Secondly, when you start talking to your children about going back to school, that conversation could change between now and when we get back to school, because we're still waiting on, as Dr. Fauci says, the pandemic is going to tell us when to open. So then the pandemic is going to tell us when we're coming back to school. But what we also have to prepare for is parents have a right to say no, that they're not subjecting their kid to a public school setting. And if they do, then the parent and the district have to come to some conclusions about Are we going to offer an online platform, or is the parent going to withdraw the kid and do homeschooling, kind of like what Tiffany's doing? And then if so, then how do we get into a good program that's going to ensure academic success for the kid? And then let's not even get on the subject of special ed, ESL, and 504 and those services, because then when you start talking about modifying work versus accommodating work, modifying work is when you give it to children who are what we used to call mentally retarded. Back in the day, the new term is intellectually disabled. That means you've changed the whole curriculum for them. Whereas when we start looking at accommodated work, that means that you got to give brake pads, it's kind of like teaching. I make this joke very randomly, but it's teaching Helen Keller. You've got to figure out how to get her to where she can learn. And then you got to figure out the language that she speaks. So then you can communicate the language she needs to learn. All of those things are called accommodations. You even see it on The Color Purple when she wrote all the names. This is a pot. This is a door. Those are called accommodations. Modified curriculum is when you change everything that kid learns and you change the way that they learn it. And so I think that when we start talking about when we're going to teach a kid and how we express this to a kid, you first got to be aware of how that kid processes things, how they internalize it. And then two, you got to be clear about what message you want to communicate, and you need to communicate it one time clearly. And so the school district is the best place to get that information. Be sure you've updated your phone number, your email, your parent contact. Be sure to add the people that need to know this information, because you might be working and that email can come to some other people. And the only way you'll know what's going on is that. Most districts can't tell you that because the boards are just now adopting the school calendars. We know when we're coming back, but if you go look at the calendars, we've extended the year by almost 2 weeks to allow for a longer Christmas, Thanksgiving break, because we kind of got a suspicion that COVID might still be here. And so, I like Dr. Fauci. He tells you all the time, I'm not a prophet. I'm not a politician. I'm a doctor. And the science tells me what I need to know. Based on the science, we know that flu season on top of corona means that we're going to have sick people. We know that. How sick they are, where they catch it, that's the things that we're trying to figure out. Those are the scenarios we're trying to control. So those are the kind of conversations and the tools and the things that you would need in your toolbox when you have that conversation.
I think it's important to know the reason your child does not want to return to school. I think that's very important to know the reason. With Zoe, she expressed to us first that she didn't want to return to school for the first grade. But it's up to the parents, and as her parents, we had already made that decision that she wasn't going to return. The uncertainty, expecting a 5-year-old to keep a mask on all day and to remain 6 feet apart from their friends is unheard of. And we just don't want to subject her to that pressure. So it wasn't even an option for her to return to school.
Tiff, when y'all had that conversation, was it out of was she stressed out? Like, what triggered that? And I'm asking for me. Like, I would love to know, how did she get to she didn't want to go back? And then how did y'all make that decision? And I'm asking because our parents will need to know on both ends, like, what triggered her to know that? And as parents, how did y'all make the decision that, you know what, they can open up school all they want. We're going to school right here at the house. Like, yeah. And I would love to know how you got to that.
I'm going to start as Tiffany is talking to Zoe. Well, personally, I honestly think that Zoe has made such a phenomenal readjustment to the homeschooling, because Tiffany was homeschooling her. So she basically went back to a pattern that she was accustomed to. And she's actually flourishing with Class Dojo. All of her videos that we're uploading, all of the teachers are giving back phenomenal commendations. And Zoe is, thriving off of it. So she's comfortable with this learning style now. I think that she, feels like she wants this to be her norm. I mean, obviously she doesn't know that word, but I think that she's aware that she can thrive and flourish in this setting.
I think she also loves the one-on-one attention. She does. I think that she loves that. She does miss her teachers. She does miss her friends, but it really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I think because also she's an only child. So she's used to being entertaining herself and being entertained by us. So I think that's why the transition has been so easy for her. Mm-hmm. So we'll see for second grade, but thankfully she's enrolled for an accredited homeschooling program for September. One, that's less pressure on me So I'll get more brain breaks. So because I'm basically going to be overseeing and reinforcing, because she'll be, on a computer with a teacher, with students. So I think she's really going to love it. She may never want to go back to the school building. Either way, I'm okay with it.
But that's so important that you all have taken the time to hear your daughter's voice. You have time to process that. And we as parents have to slow down to hear our children's voices, and having those simple dialogues, especially knowing your children's personalities, knowing how they're wired, knowing how you're wired, is so important. And understanding family dynamics with that. We do that all the time in family therapy. We got to understand how each other, or how we're wired in that regards. Because just like, again, I was saying, if they're experiencing anxiety, we're throwing out anxiety on them. I'm a firm believer that some of our children have learned anxiety and learned depression from our parents. Because if you live in an anxious home all the time, and that's all year round is anxiety, and then you go to an anxious classroom, and then you go to an anxious schoolyard on the playground, and then some of us are going to anxious churches, all you know is anxiety. So Zoe, like some of these other children, this is the first time they maybe been able to breathe. I said, this is all right. I kind of like it. But really learning some of the behavioral patterns and even talking them through. Maybe it's not might mean that it's going to be like that forever, but we're also saying it's okay that you feel not okay, and we're here to help you through that. They're developing just like us. And so helping out. And so I applaud both of you for that. And we have more conversations like this, because too many of our, and I say it this way, African-American parents are not equipped to know how to navigate through a system that several of us barely got through ourselves. So.
Great information. Anyone else want to add to that before we move on?
I wanted to add something. I have a watch party going on over here, and one of a teacher, a friend of mine, actually said Maryland laws make homeschooling very difficult for working parents. So you have to know the laws of where you live, because some states make it a little bit more difficult for parents with the homeschooling. Well, it might be a little easier now. They came up with all of these different homeschool ways and means because of COVID. Also, there was a question about accrediting homeschool for an autistic child. And as a special educator, I would say to check with CHADD. They have a lot of information about children with autism, and they can lead you in the right direction. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kennedy Krieger. They also are a hospital and a school, and they have specialty in the area of autism, and they can also help you find some resources, and they may know if there's an accredited homeschool program for children with autism.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. Can you just email me those schools that you mentioned, please? I can get that over to Sister Fern Guilford, please. Now, you don't have to do it right now, whenever you get a chance. Thank you so much. So this next question, as it pertains to students who are on medication, I guess it's a parent asking, how do they manage their day when they've reached their limit, but yet their children either does want to take the medication or doesn't? How does the homeschooling work with children who are medicated?
If the child is taking the medication that is prescribed by the doctor, then the child needs to take the medication the way that the doctor has prescribed it. The problem that you'll find is if you're not giving your child their medication consistently, then when they do take it, it can cause their stomach to hurt, or it causes all of these all of the fallout that they don't want to have. They feel bad because they're not taking it consistently. So as an administrator, I can't tell you what to do for your child. I can't tell you to medicate your child. Your doctor has to do that. But I can tell you that I see differences in your child when you're not consistent giving your child their medication. So you have to be consistent. Whatever that prescription says, that's what you're supposed to do.
Great. So the next question, the panelists, they want to know, the audience wants to know, how do you deal with your emotions being away from your students? Tell us about you now. Let's shift from the advice that we're giving to everyone else. They want to know how you're doing personally, how you're doing emotionally, how you're doing mentally, with this, I guess, break away from your classroom setting.
Well, I'll start because I've been away from my kids for quite some time. I had to have surgery and some other things. I miss them tremendously. And this is going to be a transition year for me as I'm retiring this year. So I won't get to see them. So, man, I've been crying. Martinez, I might need to talk to you, my dear. I've been crying. My youngest child is 27. That's my youngest. 27 is my youngest. So my kids at school are my kids, and anybody who will tell you, if you're mine for life. So you can be 40 and you're still mine. So this has really shaken me in a way that I never imagined, because I work with children with special needs. All of our programs have special needs in our building, but we have four different programs. One for children with autism, which is why I have the information on autism, and I'll make sure that I get that to you and Fern. Also, one for children with behavior challenges, and those kids give me the most difficulty. But I miss them. Lord have mercy, knows I miss them, because they're my kids. They're my kids. And I also do missionary work in Jamaica, and my family, we have adopted a school there and done some things. I have kids, it's about 150 kids in the school. No, I think that's more. About 175 kids in the school. And they don't have like we have here. When you don't have there, you just do not have. They live like in huts. And so I've been crying for them too, because I haven't been able to go over there, because I usually go over and do the work over there. So I'm having a rough time. I'm in therapy, and I will say that out loud and proud. Been in therapy for 21 years. Yes, I am. I believe in Jesus and therapy, because see, I believe you can have Christian counseling for Christian things, but this right here, I have to be in therapy for. So I have my therapist, and we're working through it, and talking about it helps. And I have parents' numbers. I give them my personal cell phone. I don't do Google and all that. I don't even know how to do all that stuff. They just get my cell phone number, and I call them. And I check on them, and they're like, "What? Everything okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just checking in." And guess what? That's that relationship piece. You got to have that relationship piece. That's why I'm crying, because I love these kids. I love their parents, and I pick up the phone, call them. Some of my kids have never had a positive phone call until we've called from my school, because at my school, you better make 3 before you make one negative. Because it's necessary. You got the teachers at my school are amazing. They reach out, they feed kids, they clothe kids. I mean, it's amazing what we're able to do. I'm sure they're like me, crying and trying to figure it all out.
Dr. Brown, can I first of all commend you and thank you for sharing that, because one of the things I try to do is change the narrative about therapy for us. It's not a rich white person's disease, and you're not crazy for seeing a therapist. You're sane because you know that I can't handle this on my own. I'm with you. I can call on Jesus, but he also gave me the tools to find the therapist that is in line with my belief system to help me through some behavior things that I might exhibit. I say all the time, I believe that Jesus was a cognitive behavioral therapist, because he says, as a man thinketh, so is he. So as we change our thoughts and our heart, we then begin to change our behaviors in that. So I'm sorry, Pastor Sean has been grooming me. Y'all pray for his strength in the Lord in these last and evil days. But I believe what you're experiencing is what a lot of us are experiencing, what I call a complicated, complex grief, because we don't have an opportunity to bring closure to so many things in our lives. And so now we're finding ways of dealing with this. But I love how you've done it by touching out and reaching out to people, because this is not, we've labeled this wrong. First of all, we're calling it social distancing when it should be called physical distancing, because social then taps into the psyche. And so when I'm saying social distancing, I'm then cutting people off, as opposed to saying finding new ways of remaining connected to them. So we marketed this whole thing wrong. We should be physical distancing while still remaining socially connected in that. And because of that, we're finding too many people going through this horrible grieving, post-traumatic stress disorder, and with that as well. So we have to be careful, and we have to change the framework in which we discuss this whole COVID, what we're going through with this as well. Because when we start saying, no, I'm just physically distancing myself from you, but I'm going to remain socially connected. How? Through a phone call, through a text, through journaling, all these things, so I can then process these things so I don't lose my sanity, but remain intact while still doing the work that I've been called to do.
And
That's a very good.
Go ahead, Angelica.
I was just going to say, I was actually on a panel earlier today talking about this very topic, that even though we've been physically distant from our students, I feel as though I'm closer to my students through this experience than I was when we were in the classroom. And it's interesting because we don't. So I'm a choral director here in the state of Maryland, and not to toot my own horn, but I'm one of the best. And I have some very dedicated, driven students. I have very high performing choirs who, often do festivals, competitions. We, do performances all over the place. So because of this pandemic, we were able to do our county festival, and of course qualified for state, but of course state festival was canceled. So then when you take away these high stakes performances, is what we call them in our field, once you take away these high stakes performances, we kind of had to really revisit, well, how do I still be a musician if I'm not performing in an ensemble? So it allowed us to do things like project-based learning, where I gave students 20 different projects. You just pick whichever one speaks to you, to give them other ways to grow as a musician outside of the high stakes performances, which has actually brought us closer, because I'm learning about their music preferences. I'm learning about their family history. I'm learning about their culture. I'm learning more about their own personal history through the playlists that they share with me, through their video logs. One student even wrote me a song. It's been a wonderful experience for us to grow closer through music without the pressure of preparing for high stakes performances. And like Lori was saying, I do miss my students. If I had known on that Friday, March 13th, that was going to be the last time that I was going to physically see my students, I promise you, I would have hugged them a little tighter. I would have said something more profound. In my naivety, because this is what we were told back in March, I'm going to see you guys in 2 weeks. I only grabbed enough stuff to teach, to be away from the classroom for 2 weeks. I didn't grab all of my belongings, so, and now almost 3 months later, it's unbelievable that was the last time we saw our students. And I'm also not going to be returning to my school in the fall. So that really was the last time that I physically saw my students. And when this first started, it was difficult to really grapple with how much of my self-worth and how much of how I view myself was directly tied to my service to my students. And on the surface, it's like, yes, I understand that I have my school life and I have my home life, but most of most of how I identify myself was tied into me being an educator and me being a choral director and me serving my students. So then to have that stripped away and so suddenly was very jarring. Very jarring. I really had to do some soul searching within myself to say, who am I outside of the classroom? How can I still be an effective educator even though I don't have a classroom? Does this mean I'm no longer the teacher that I say I am? You're the teacher of the year. Who are you without high stakes performances? Who are you without, this audience of your students?
Come on, Angela. You are ministering to someone right now, please.
Yes. So but I found out that outside of those experiences, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I am still an educator, but just reimagining what that model looks like in this present moment. Yeah. In this time, I found that my bond between myself and my son has grown so much stronger. I know him so much better now than I did before. And when this pandemic first started, I would get on Zoom calls with my kids. No one told me to, just me being an overachiever. I was doing weekly Zooms with my students. And I got off of a Zoom call one day. This was back in March. And Austin heard me talking to my students, of course. And when I got off the call, he said that he did not like my choir. And I was like, what do you mean? And what he was trying to say was that I don't like the time that these students take away from me. And that was something difficult that I really had to get into. And I'm just like, wow. So this pandemic has caused me to now bring my ministry back home to my son and to my family. And all of the effort that I put into, being this great educator and this great choral conductor, I'm now able to refocus that into my son. And it has brought us so much closer. I am now more in tune with who he is, how he learns, how he plays, how he sees himself, how he sees me. And this is information, believe it or not, that I used to long to have. I used to ask his teachers, can I just come and sit in one day? Because Austin's school was right next door to mine. I could literally walk across the tennis court and there was his school. I was very fortunate for that. But I would ask his teachers, can I just come and sit and watch? And they were like, well, we typically don't have parents do that because, having the parent in the room. And I get that, because I'm an educator as well. But it wasn't to monitor the teachers. It was just so I can see my son in action, And now since we've been out, I've been able to do that firsthand. And that has been invaluable. That has been, just life-changing. I mean, and it's been a few months now, so I'm doing webinars like this and interviews and things like that, and I'm still being active, as a music educator and talking about the need for music education. I'm still able to do that on different platforms, but even more so, I am now able to actually service my son in a way that I wasn't able to do before, and I'm really grateful for that.
Unbelievable.
And
Thank you so much.
Angelica,
Testimony.
you just ministered to Shannon. She said, "Thank you for putting this into words. This is what I have been feeling without having the words to express it." And I want to say thank you too for that word reimagining, because as I said before, I'm retiring this year, and I felt like you. I'm like, if I am retiring, then I'm not going to be Dr. A anymore. And if I'm not Dr. A, who am I? But like you, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a friend, I'm a minister, I'm a missionary, I can do so many other things, and I'm not confined to the box of just Dr. A. And that, thank you, reimagining. I'm going to put that into, I'm going to put that into my journal. I'm reimagining myself.
Yes, I love it. Dr. Stewart, can you share with us what you're feeling?
To be very frank, I'm exhausted. I'm emotionally exhausted. When we left, we left where I sit and work. We knew more was coming than what was being said in the way that I serve. And so a lot of the information that we had, we couldn't share. And so now especially with the pandemic on top of, I work in an industry where in the field where African American and Hispanic boys are the target, and they are the target to move academically, but it just seems to be that they are the target of other negative connotations that we as a race have not been able to get our minds around. And so then when I'm listening to my kids say that they were using athletics to end poverty and they were trying, and now they can't go practice, that really hurts. That they're scared to go run now because they're scared they're going to get shot. And so I'm very pissed off, if I could say that professionally, because we're unable. As a practitioner, I don't have an answer. I don't have a fix. I don't have a know-how. I don't have the ability from my desk to leverage this for my kids. And so then when I sit down with myself, it's not even the reimagine. The question I sit with at the end of the day is, was I effective enough this day? And I found myself looking back through the day, did I have enough impact? Did I give my best? And sometimes I wonder if my best was really good enough for what I'm trying to get them through. You know what I mean? And so my anxiety has been on 10. And so and I'm a preacher and I go to a psychotherapist. I need to be sure that all the people in my head agree, because they talk a lot. They do. They talk a lot. And a lot of times they don't agree with you. And sometimes it's always that one that want to tell you what you can go do with your feelings. And so I have to go get him and set him back in the corner because he will tell you what he thinks about your feelings. And every decision I make changes the trajectory of a person's life. When I make a decision as an educator, I don't just change that kid's life. I change how that parent supports that kid. I change how finances flow from that home to athletics to academics. I'm impacting if that kid goes to a 2-year or 4-year university. And I am wondering now, when I look back at things, like, am I really getting this right? And the stress of that conversation is what's sitting on me. And so I'm really saying now, even down to when I spoke to, and I had to go check with my therapist this morning because I wasn't right about it. When you come and ask me, what is my next? As an administrator, it irritates me when I tell you I don't know. Because the people who should be making those decisions can't tell me, and it frustrates me that I have to answer to you and you don't know. And then we pay you to know and you don't know. And then you give me this very generic answer. It's a talking point. Well, we've never had a pandemic like this before. You're right, but you have a policy that speaks to moving forward, and you won't exercise that. So then we can't prepare parents or children because we don't have policies. And so my frustration is there. If I could say that anything, I'm very angry at the fact that we had the murder of another Black man that has spawned this chaos. And now we're going to see increasing in pandemic scores because we're going to have children and adults that are sick. They're going to bring it home. And then we're going to decrease our ability to be effective in the classroom, because then a lot of our teachers, and this is what we're not talking about, people who are teachers don't enter this field for the money. You're not paying me for, it's not the money. And those are my kids. We co-parent. I just let them go home and sleep at your home. They're our kids. We co-parent together. They with me 8 hours. I let them go home with you the rest of the day, and I give you weekends. That's part of the agreement. I give you weekends. And so my stress is that now, Yvonne, I've got kids that we were watching that were in abusive homes, and because work is not happening, we've got kids that are being beat down, and I'm not able to see it, not able to support it. We have parents that were in abusive relationships that we were able to check in on, and so them bringing their kids to school was actually my touch point, and I don't have my touch point no more. So now now I don't see my kids, so I am stressed beyond words because I'm not sure if my babies are making it. It's not even academics anymore. Are you socially safe? Are you physically okay? Do you have enough food? Because breakfast and lunch really was the meal for the day. And it just was. And to not be able to give answers to that, we have food distribution sites, but if you don't have a car because you relied on school transportation to get you there, then how you get to the food? So, I mean, that's my frustration. I'm very frustrated. I don't think that I'm angry anymore. I'm frustrated that the people who have been writing policies are still writing the policies, and the people who vote are still voting for the same policies that we have proven that are not effective or effective for the children of this day and age. So I think that's where I am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stewart. Amazing. Wow. Martinez, I know that you can sum this all up for us. Thank you all for being so authentic and transparent. The text messages and everything is coming in. You all are blessing so many people. And this is what we initially wanted this platform to be, a place not where we just give them tips and give them advice, but we be open and transparent so that we can connect and interconnect with, like Martinez said, not social distance, but physical distance. And I think so many people are being blessed. Thank you so much.
No, I think that Pastor Sean is right on target, that so many of us in this field, I know teachers, social workers, therapists, we are very concerned. And I believe in these next months, we will see an increase when it comes to child abuse, domestic violence, all of those type of things. There's that commercial, I don't know if it made it out there, that I love, where the wife is calling 911, but she calls as if she's ordering a pizza. And she's going, hello, 911. She goes, yes, what are your specials today? You know, you called 911. Yes, I know I called 911, but I need pizzas delivered to my house. How fast can you deliver them to me? So as finding creative ways and even putting together maybe even a safety plan with your families, or safety plans with your children, some sort of safety plan with your teachers, that you can give signals to, especially those that we know have had some challenges in the homes, creating some safety plans so that they can signal you, or you can ask keywords to make sure that they are all right, that they are eating, that they aren't being beaten, and these type of things. So again, that's why this dialogue and these type of platforms are so important in creating these. And I want to challenge y'all. I've been born and raised all my life in the church, but I feel that the churches, we've been we've been too silent on some of these issues that are prevalent, that are affecting our communities. I'm not trying to be the pastor. I'm trying to come alongside to help the church, help the pastor. You're trained, many pastors are trained in spiritual training. I'm the one that's trained in behavioral. I don't want your job. I got my own job. I want to be a blessing to the people of God, because that's what God has called me to do. So therefore, how can we, the church, where that has always been our place of gathering for social change, so how can we link education, education, theology, psychology all together. So now we're really doing the work of Christ by healing the families and moving forward in that regards as well, so that we have clear communication. And how do we transfer what was typically all of the teacher's job of observing family behaviors now to be the village that is now keeping track of all of our children and create these learning decision trees or what have you in order to secure the safety of our communities, specifically our babies. And I hear you with that, because as a youth pastor for 15 years, those were my babies. I said, now listen, they belong to me. Help me, Jesus, with that. So I get all of that we're doing. And by having these dialogues, again, thank you, because this is leading the way, how we have these dialogues to helping our families who are in distress. So thank you again.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. So again, they want to know a little bit more about yourselves. In other words, are you involved in faculty staff meetings? What is your connection to your colleagues? And can you talk a little bit about that? Is that a sense of comfort? You know, are you interconnecting with your colleagues?
I'll go ahead and start. Yes. So at my school, my department, we have meetings every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Because we teach on Fridays. So on Monday, we talk about how did our lesson go last Friday. And on this meeting is not just our department, but also the assistant principal that's assigned to our department. And sometimes even our principal joins in as well, just to hear how things are going, how we're impacting the students. Our principal will ask, you know, have you reached out to these parents? You know, it really is a team effort in our department. Plus, our principal also has been having monthly staff meetings with all of the staff in the school, just to update everyone on, you know, basically what she's heard from up top, what she hasn't heard. So stop asking, you know, things like that. But something about this pandemic has really made transparent the leadership skills of those that have been placed with the responsibility of being over a department or being over a school or over, you know, it's really been pulling out of some people those leadership skills that have been kind of dormant, because you have to be transparent, you have to be authentic, and you have to lead. And so I know in my school, we've been very appreciative of the assistant principals and our principal for being transparent, for saying, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we know. This is what we don't know. See you next month. You know, keep me informed. So we've been still doing that.
Anyone else connected or interconnected with your faculty, with the staff, the administration?
I check in. I have 14 schools that I manage, that I supervise, and I check in with my teams daily. And so I randomly text, I randomly call, I randomly will send the email. I send emails with the task and all of that, but I'm intentional about how I connect with them. I want to know what's going on in their world. I've got teachers on my team, and you know, we call it team and family. I have family members who have husbands and wives that are out for military, and so they are a single parent, and then now they're a single parent at home trying to make all of this magic happen, on top of teaching, on top of homeschooling their kids. And last week, you know, I like to bake, and so last week I made pound cakes and went and hand delivered them to some of my teachers. And then I made
21 to 27.
See, it's the Angeline, it's always one in the class, baby. It's always that one in the class that it's just one. And that's okay. I do good with that one. But I made, and then I made peach cobblers and took it to some of my teachers. And it was just to say thank you. It wasn't for nothing more. And then I had a chance to see something, because you know, sometimes when your partners show up to work, that's who that professionally present. Sometimes when I do my oxygen check, I need to see how you're breathing at home. And so sometimes when you come by just to bring a peach cobbler and say, hey, I'm just checking on you, that's when you get a chance to hear the heart of the people you're working with. So I'm very hands-on, but I'm very touchable even if I'm not physically present. And my ability to think out of the box, my office is where I sit. It's not where I go to a building. My office is where I sit. I do most of my work by laptop, iPhone, so I don't have to be contained to an office. And when I check in with my team is actually able to tell me what's really going on with the kids, so then I can actually mobilize support to that situation. And we're not just mobilizing support to students, I'm mobilizing support to staff also, because good teachers are happy teachers, great teachers are paid teachers. And so I want to be sure that the equity that I'm putting into my students is also the equity I'm putting into my staff.
Wow. So this is just a question for myself, Dr. Stewart. 14 different schools, is that synonymous with the 14 different voices? I'm just curious.
No, there's only 2 voices in my head. No, there's only 2 in there. There's only 2 of them, and those 2 agree to disagree most of the time, but now when they, yeah, right. But now when they agree, you need to get out the way.
Let's be honest. Let's let the whole public know that you tried to make me the vegan pound cake and it didn't work.
No, baby, that thing died. It didn't work. It gave up the ghost. That thing died. It died just like Christ did on Friday.
Doctor, you want to finish that question before we go into our last and final question that I want to ask all of you to answer? No? Okay. All right. So the last question, Dr. Martinez, go ahead, sweetheart. No? Okay. So my question, I want each of you to think about this. This is my own personal question. We pretty much completed the questions. So what have you learned? I want to piggyback off of Angelica. I thought that was so powerful. What have you learned about yourself during this pandemic? Can you tell us something that you haven't mentioned on either last week's panel or this week? What have you learned about yourself? Was it something that shocked you? Was it something that now you are being purposeful and intentional about trying to develop, redevelop? What can you share with us that you've learned about yourself aside from your responsibilities as a teacher? Excuse me, an educator. I'm sorry.
I don't know why Dr. Brown's sitting there with her computer on mute when she knows she got something to say. Come on, Brown, we waiting on you.
No, Brown she's reading the YouTube comments. She's going through all of the different platforms.
Okay, I was messing with her because she's retiring, so I was trying to get all out of her.
I'm here. Look, I'm here. My thing keeps going. Can you hear me? One of the things that I've learned about myself that I haven't said is I came into education after being in funeral services for 14 years. And I never wanted to be a teacher. And now that I come to the end of this part of my teaching career, I really was born an educator. I just did not realize that early on. I wanted to do what I thought my family wanted me to do, but I went back and I looked at my life and saw when I was like 5 and 6 years old, I used to teach. I loved to teach. And then when I was like 14 and 15, I used to teach Bible study with my dad's pastor, because I always wanted to teach, but I never wanted to be a teacher. I'm so glad that God gave me the opportunity to become an educator, to affect the lives of children in 3 different states, and to do things that I never imagined possible. I also know that now I have to continue with the heart of a missionary, because I know I am a missionary. I know I love going overseas. I love going to help people who don't have. Why? Because when you don't have in other countries, it's a lot different than you not having here. Very, very different. And, the difference between you getting a shower at the shelter and you taking a bath in the river. And, you know, oftentimes we take a bath in the river. And so I know that this is something that God has given me and gave me the opportunity to be an educator so that I can work in the schools wherever I go. So I'm blessed. I've been blessed with this career, and I've been blessed to be able to do it. And I know I'll continue to be blessed to do God's work and God's will.
Wonderful, Dr. Laurie. Thank you so very much. And we certainly are praying for you as you shift and transition to your next journey as a missionary. We're praying for you. Let us know if there's anything we can do to align ourselves and assist you with that type of work. We appreciate you.
All right. So I'll go. Is that okay?
Either that or I'm going to be like the teacher in the class that decides to pick on one of y'all.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Teacher. So then you've told us your teaching style, so you like to pick on Let me quit. I've learned that I actually move faster once I get clear on my decisions. Usually it requires me to have a team of folk together because we're making decisions that come from one place down to another, and usually we have to get everybody together. I've learned that I'm a better team member than I am a team player. And so when I say that, I mean this. That means that I get my team to the table and we don't Zoom, we conference call, because I need you to be able to keep moving to do what it is you have planned in your life. And I just need you to brain dump. And so we actually have people on my team who does other things. So like, I'm good at saying where we're going. I have to trust one of the middle school leaders to actually say, you know, we're not on task, and she brings us back on task. And so it requires the whole village to do the work of school. And I usually say ministries because most teachers who are in education are called to teach. They're not just trained, they're called to teach. And so I think this is their purposeful life ministry, just pastor's moment. And so I found that I'm better with the team. I also found that I'm better with delegating. I used to try to want to be sure that not that I managed it, because I don't have control issues. I just have oversight concerns that make me bring site-based decision management skills to the table. Martinez, did you take your glasses off?
Listen, we're like the governor from Minnesota. We don't want to hear all that rhetoric, okay? We just want to hear the truth.
Yeah. So no, I actually have learned that I do better once I've made the decision to let the people who manage the decision run with it. And then I've learned to trust their skill set, because I've spent a lot of time working with them, developing them so they can see it from my view. So then I'm learning that if I open a gate, I trust them to come back with the skills that they need, and they do the work and we get it done.
You know, one of the most underappreciated jobs is the job of a mother, and a mother that educates at home. So I have to say that I've learned that God has truly graced me with, I'll use one of Zoe's favorite words, infinity amount of patience. Whenever she wants to stress something that's a long time, that's infinity, is it? So an infinity amount of patience. I don't have much patience for adults, but I have all the patience in the world for children. So that's what I've learned about myself during this pandemic. I too never wanted to be a teacher, only, you know, to teach my own, but or those close to me. I never wanted to be in a teacher, although if one more person email, text, or message me about a school, I don't know what I'm going to do. But it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding, you know, and that's what.
Well, now, Tiffany, when you get ready to open up the school, call me, because you got Dr. Brown, you got me. Marty was an executive. I mean, we could do this. Like we could do this.
Every one of you.
Yeah, we could do this. That's legal money. We don't leave legal money on the table. That's work, baby. You come, we can get to that.
Absolutely.
One thing I think I've learned about myself is that it is okay to take breaks. So when I was actually, working every day in the classroom, I had a very hectic schedule. And this pandemic has caused me to slow down a bit and be strategic about what I do every day. I became very focused on making sure Austin keeps his schedule and he's still learning. But there are some days when I am just not motivated to get out of bed. I am not motivated to keep that strict schedule that I started off with when the pandemic first hit. And I've learned that it is okay. It is okay to be sensitive to how I feel, to be sensitive to how my family feels. We don't have to be learning for 3 hours straight. We can get up, watch a movie, and maybe, practice his writing skills in the afternoon. And that's okay. To be adaptable and to be adjustable to how I'm feeling, while still at the same time also being able to recognize when I really do have to motivate myself to move and to get things done, like say grades are due, or you have to do, something that's school related. You have to be on this Zoom meeting with your administrator or whatever. Just being kind to myself, listening to myself, and being sensitive to the needs of myself and my family. That's what I've learned has been the biggest thing, that, every day does not have to be jam-packed with activities. It's okay to take a break.
Martinez, we just want to again restructure the question for you. What have you learned about yourself during this pandemic? From your place of the work that you do.
Right. I learned one, how to be flexible, not only with my own life, but even how God speaks to me as an individual. We had to recreate therapy in 2 weeks' time. And in being that way, we have grown, hit numbers that we have never thought we would hit. We did not miss a beat. We did not have to lay anyone off. In fact, we went through a hiring process. God developed a book out of me that is now going to the editors, as well as developing a podcast. So in that, God still reminds me that one, his grace is sufficient, and two, what might be pain for others, or even pain, what I visualize as pain, God can turn anything around in our lives if we trust his process and allow him to be God and us to be his servants, willing to do the work that he's called us to do.
Wow. Please, when you're ready, obviously, get the information to us so we can send all the information, how to purchase your book. We certainly will support you. Absolutely. That's what we're here for. Listen, especially when it comes to Black-owned businesses. Listen, it's a new era, y'all. So we will support you. I'm going to ask, I want you all, I promised that I would keep it under an hour and 30 minutes. I know Dr. Stewart has Bible study. So any last departing words, if there's anything in your heart and your spirit that you want to share with anyone before we leave? If not, then I'll give us the benediction and we'll move on. Anyone else? All right. Again, thank you so very much. We appreciate you. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Be safe, and let's keep praying for our country. God has turned it around, so we believe him. Y'all have a blessed night. God bless you.
Good night.
Thank you again.